And welcome back to eNCA Moneyline, your money guide. I'm Kim Kabateli, coming to you live from the Investing in African Mining Indaba in Cape Town. A day busy with lots of sessions today. It started with the official welcome by the Minister of Mineral Resources, Ngoako Ramatlhodi. The minister going all out to sell South Africa as an investment option, and that's despite concerns about crumbling electricity infrastructure and, of course, a volatile labor sector. But what the government is saying is that it's working on strengthening our electricity grid, and it's also announced plans to get tough on quarrelling mines and unions.
South Africa's mining sector is by far the country's largest electricity consumer. But as the country markets itself to attract more mining investment, government finds it's increasingly having to allay fears there'll be enough power to satisfy the industry's thirst. It's prompted several interventions to stabilize Eskom's power grid.
There is government decision to bail out Eskom financially, but also to reorganize the management. We are allowing independent producers to come on the grid, and we are tackling this on an urgent basis so that we can begin to resolve the energy challenges that faces South Africa. We understand that there cannot be mining without electricity.
On labour disputes, the ministry is considering legislation to force companies and labour unions to the negotiating table should salary negotiations deadlock. It's mainly to prevent a repeat of 2012's 5-month-long platinum strike, which culminated in the bloody Marikana massacre.
We are discussing legally binding arbitration in the legislature, so that we have got a law that says if the parties cannot agree, in other words, labor and the industry, then someone must arbitrate and the outcome will be binding. As a rule, you don't easily bring the politics into labor relations matters, and I would hope we can keep that. Otherwise, we spend a lot of time being too busy negotiating instead of regulating.
Ramatlhodi says protracted strikes in the mining industry are not the norm. But he says cooperation from labour and business is important. Lester Kivet, Cape Town.
Well, South Africa is one of the few countries in the world where it's illegal to possess unrefined precious metals without permission. But despite this and the dangers that come with it, illegal mining continues unabated, making billions.
21 years old and far from home. For at least 5 years, Ngoako has been working here, a disused mine. He's in Davidton, east of Johannesburg, an area popular among Zamazamas.
The money that we make is between 2,000 and 3,000 rand, either per month or per week. It all depends on how hard you have worked.
Willing to risk his life to put food on the table, Ngoako is willing to take the risk to earn a decent living. But it's not only mining that's dangerous. Recently, 5 illegal miners were killed and others arrested after what appears to be a turf war erupting between rival gangs. The Institute for Security Studies estimates that between 3.6 billion and 7.2 billion rand worth of gold was stolen in 2013.
There's a demand for the resources that which they are mining, and it is very prevalent in the gold sector. In order to curb it, we must close down or shut down the demand for it. If there is no demand for it, I do believe that it would cut down the activities that are taking place.
But some believe the illegal mines should be used properly.
We're probably killing more people on the illegal gold mines every month than we kill on hundreds of thousands in the legal gold mines in a year. And the state gets no benefit by those illegal mines. People work in horrible conditions, no training, no pension, no benefits, dangerous, and it comes from crime, it breeds crime.
Ngoako is one of thousands of illegal miners who brave cold temperatures and difficult conditions. Most say they have no plans to stop digging for gold. But government wants to take action.
The recent spate of killings suggests that we are pushing them into a small corner, so they begin to fight for space. So we hope we can flush them out in the near future. And secondly, we are hoping that we can initiate legislation which make illegal mining an economic crime, so that they are not only charged with trespassing, that we charge them with real serious crimes.
So it appears that life for Tebogo will not be getting any easier, and for now he'll continue to make a living deep underground. Arabile Kumete, Davidton, Ekurhuleni.
Well, for some industry reaction to what the minister said earlier today in his official welcome, I spoke to Tony Zogby, who is the Southern Africa leader for mining at Deloitte, and we started by talking about what the minister said around regulation.
I think the only thing that he really said new around that was the fact that he would allow the legislation to be tested in the Constitutional Court beforehand. Now that's quite critical, because if you enact legislation and then challenge it, it becomes a much more difficult process to unwind. So I think that does give a lot of comfort to investors, that by the time the legislation is enacted, it has been tested in court, it's legal, and it just gives some certainty. So I think that was a good point.
One of the areas of concern for industry has been around this question of this developmental price, and obviously that's something that he wants the constitutionality of tested. Why is industry uncomfortable with this principle?
Well, I think obviously industry's in this. I mean, there are a number of reasons why you run a mining company. One of them is to make profit. If that price is taken out of your control, or if that price runs below your cost, and you can't change it, I mean, it just makes no sense to be in business. So I think the developmental price is critical for those strategic minerals that they apply to.
One of the things he's called for in the past, and I think he did touch on again, is a national champion in the mining industry. Do we still have any sense of what he means by that?
Well, it's interesting. It's the first time I've really heard him refer to a national champion. Now, what could that mean? It could be a state mining company. Are we looking at nationalism or nationalisation of the industry in a different form? I don't think so. I think that he was really throwing out the idea it could appear in a number of different formats. Maybe it's another, a South African state company which is going to focus on growing the South African resource base.
One of the things that investors in the South African mining sector worry about are labour relations. There's been what people are calling a trust deficit between government, business and labour. How do you see the minister approaching labour relations? Well,
I thought the minister was quite tough on labour relations. He spoke about, ensuring that violence comes to an end. He spoke about being tough on violence. I think it's necessary. I think a line has to be drawn in the sand as to how far you can go. But he also spoke about dialogue. So at the end of the day, I think it's got to be a balance. It's got to be a balance between, just how far you can go in terms of your strike action, just how far you can go in terms of your labour relations, and there has to be dialogue between government, between the mining companies and labour, and the communities.
One area where mining, I think, tends to butt heads with government has been around the mining charter, the targets around ownership and empowerment. The minister also making some strong statements today around black economic empowerment.
Yeah, I think there were two things that he said that were interesting. They're going to be reviewing the mining companies against the mining charter. And if those companies are not performing against the charter, I think he might enact some legislation in the MPRDA which will legalise it more. But he also said something along the lines of no more individual empowerment. He spoke about broad-based economic empowerment. So that'll be quite interesting as well. What does he mean by individual empowerment? What does he mean by more broad-based empowerment? So that should be an interesting development to watch.
And that was Tony Zogby, who is Southern Africa mining leader with Deloitte. And that's it from today's Mining Indaba. Tomorrow is going to start off with a session asking the question, why Africa, why now? What is the investment case for investing in the mining industry on the continent? Other sessions are going to deal with creating value for shareholders, but also how the mining industry plans to share some of the wealth that's created there. If you'd like to keep track of what's happening at the Mining Indaba, do visit eNCA.com. But for now, it's back to you, Trudy.
Our daily question and answer feature is up next. Stay tuned.